Welcome to Massive Passive Cash Flow, the podcast that guides professionals to financial prosperity. Join our community and let's start building your wealth. Here's your host, Gary Wilson.
Hello, this is Gary Wilson, and welcome to this version of the Massive Passive Cash Flow podcast. Welcome aboard all investors and agents and a lot of business owners and professionals. The way we do things is a little bit unique. We do a lot of creative purchasing, things like that, no doubt about it. But we always endeavor to get our followers on a cash basis so you can get the best deals. And later on, you can refinance, pull your money out, things like that. So if you have not yet, please subscribe to the podcast. Of course, it's on 30 some odd channels. The one you're on now could be iTunes, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, probably downloaded in over 50 countries now. And also, if you'd like to find one of our famous investor agents to help you invest correctly, just go to realestatewithgarywilson.com, click on members area. If you're already a member, you know what to do, go on the left. If you're not a member, go to the right and get yourself a free peek for a month. Grab all the free books you can get and have at it. Have some fun. Learn all you can learn on my dime. Okay. So in any case, without further ado, I want to introduce a wonderful guest we have today, Edna Keep, all the way from, I'll let her tell you where she's from. We'll just tell you, north of the border. But welcome aboard. I appreciate you sharing your valuable time with us today.
Thank you so much, Gary. Yeah, it's funny. A lot of people have a hard time pronouncing our province, but it's Saskatchewan, Canada.
Yeah, I love it. So, by the way, we have in the northern states, a lot of the newscasters, whenever a big front's coming down, they'll either call it a Canadian Clipper or a Saskatchewan Screamer.
Oh, yeah. That's good. That's true.
But for all the listeners who've never been up there, guys, you couldn't find a more beautiful part of the world. I highly encourage you to visit. So let me tell you a little bit about Edna. Edna, her journey is from single mom, age 16, okay, living in subsidized housing. Sounds familiar? That's sort of my background. With a daughter in subsidized daycare, to multi-millionaire real estate entrepreneur and coach, inspiring others. Major operations, long-term buy and hold rentals. We love you already. All right. Apartment buildings, claim to fame as a $65 million portfolio built with other people's money. All right. A strong proponent of education and inspiration. Absolutely. Edna offers live training with our free real estate coaching Fridays and Mindset Monday live events on Facebook each week. So Edna, if you could, that's pretty impressive. And I'm so glad to hear these things and read these things about you. I knew you were going to be a great interview, and obviously you're successful. So again, we really do appreciate you spending your valuable time with us. But kind of, if you wouldn't mind, just paint a little bit of a picture here. Who is Edna Keep, and then we'll go into some what you're doing and how you're doing it, maybe some case studies.
Sure. Sounds good. Well, I started in real estate 13 years ago. Before that, I was a financial advisor for 15 years. And I really liked being a financial advisor. It was a fun gig, and I enjoyed giving people advice and about money and all that kind of stuff. And I never, ever intended to get into real estate full time. It was just, I had clients coming in telling me they'd bought this property and that property, and our market was pretty hot at that time. And I thought, oh, well, that old fear of missing out, maybe I should buy a property. And that was kind of our intention, maybe one or two properties, just take advantage of the market. And we signed up for some training through the Rich Dad, Poor Dad group. And within 18 months, we owned 50 doors and had our first $5,000 a month in cash flow. And it was then that I really understood real estate. Before that, I had no idea the benefits of real estate at all, because I was trained as a salesperson for mutual funds. So I had the blinders on, and that was the only thing I knew. And once we really understood real estate, Gary, I couldn't even sell mutual funds anymore. I sold my practice 2 years later after we got in. And so 6 months from when we hit the 50 doors and never looked back. And a lot of people thought I was absolutely crazy because being a single mom, and I kind of self-studied my way to that level. And earning about $250,000 a year. And people thought, you would want to start over? Well, yeah, I did. And I don't regret 1 minute of it. I really enjoy what I do. And I enjoy helping other people buy real estate and build up their wealth. So yeah, that's kind of where I am today.
Wow. Well, I appreciate you sharing that. What's interesting is we have something even more in common, which is Robert Kiyosaki. So as a mastermind group I'm involved in, and years ago we were blessed to have him come to one of our annual winter meetings in Lake Tahoe, Colorado. And we got to spend a day with him, have dinner with him. And way back in the 90s when he first got started, I purchased his signature program, right? Mm-hmm. And I was already just started investing, and I used a lot of his techniques, which were a lot of creative purchasing techniques, I guess you would call them. So when it comes to that, I'm guessing you've done some of this thing yourself. So what can you tell us about, how do you go about leveraging other people's time, money, and knowledge, and what does that look like?
Well, my favorite class of all of Robert Kiyosaki's was the creative financing. So just even understanding the purchasing power, helping other people purchase at the same time you're helping yourself was a big one for us. And we were actually inducted into Robert Kiyosaki's Hall of Fame called the Tigert Learning Hall of Fame within, I think, the 18 months or right around then. Because we had used a number of his strategies, including, buying a certain amount and getting some free, and vendor financing, and just everything that we could think of. We'd done rent to owns and lease options because we were still feeling our way out on where we wanted to be. And we ended up in the long-term buy and hold and mostly apartment buildings. But at the beginning, we didn't know because there were so many different ways of building a real estate portfolio. But we started focusing, I think we'd bought houses, then we couldn't get financing anymore, which happens to a lot of people. They get to the point where they can't get any more mortgages for houses. And then we moved into the multifamily arena, and that's how we grew from there.
Wow. Well, that tell you what, pretty impressive. And when it comes to the buying the real estate itself, when you start off, I guess, using other people's money when possible, finding investors to back you, stuff like that. I'm gathering you got more into the capital markets too. So what can you tell us about, buying the right real estate with investor capital to build your wealth, not to build the other guy's wealth, but to build your wealth?
Well, you know what? We started out with some equity in our home. So that's how we got started. A lot of people do. And we realized very quickly, if we were going to scale to any length, that we had to have investor capital. And, it's really comfortable talking with investors and with people about money as having been a financial advisor for 15 years. So it was just kind of a natural way to move into talking to investors about real estate. I actually enjoyed it more than talking about the whole mutual fund market. I felt like we had more control. So I found it easy to talk to people and raise capital for real estate investing. In our home area at the time, like I said, we were in a really good market. Our just to give you an idea, our personal house when we bought it in 2002 was $220,000, and by 2007 when we got into real estate, it had increased to $400,000. So that was kind of what was happening in our market then. So when we were able to share that with people, we ended up using their ability to get mortgages to start with. So we got houses, their ability to get mortgage, their down payment, legal fees and all that kind of stuff. And that's what helped us scale. One of I think the third deal we ever did, we got vendor financing on the deal. So we had enough money to put the down payment, but then we swapped out her money and she stayed in with us long-term at just a straight interest rate on the down payment. So we really learned those strategies and how they worked. And, we found that sellers really like to still stay in real estate because, over the years, they'd made really good money in real estate, but didn't, a lot of cases are retiring. And it's like, well, where are they going to put their money? Are they going to put it in GICs or mutual funds? Probably not. So they like the idea of staying invested in real estate as well. And so we get a lot of vendor financing and still to this day do. So that's one of our number one ways of getting money. But, a lot of people also ask, well, did a lot of people come to you from your mutual fund days? You know what? No. Most of the people that worked with me, I said I must have did too good of a job selling them. They weren't interested in knowing more about real estate. So there were a few. But most of them came just through networking events, and just seeing our initial success, we got more and more investors approaching us.
Okay, that's leading me. Now my brain's going down different paths now. I'm trying to figure out what to go to next. Here's something I want to talk about. When it comes to, and we'll go back to that in a second, but you maybe think of something else here.
Sure.
When it comes to the type of property, like a lot of people have this, I call it a limiting belief that, well, you got to start off with single family homes, then you move up to duplexes, then you move up to fourplexes, and you move up to 10plexes and so forth. And that might be good for some people, but one of my favorite colleagues, he was an engineer, and his very first purchase was a 94-unit apartment complex, right? And I thought, well, that's pretty cool, because I followed the other people kept telling me start small and then grow from there. And I remember thinking years later, why didn't I start off with a 100-unit building, like he did? But so what can you tell us about bypassing the single family homes and going straight into the multifamily?
Well, we were like you, Gary. We didn't think that we could get multifamily. We thought we had, first of all, had to have years of experience and had to have a whole bunch of houses first. I don't know if we played too much Monopoly or what, but I think the other reason, Gary, where people buy houses is because that's what most people train on, so it's kind of a natural proclamation. The other reason is most people own their own home. So to buy another home to use as a rental property is kind of, again, another natural step. Well, I already did that. I don't have to learn that much to buy another house. So there's a little bit more of a learning curve to get into the multifamily. And that's the area that I focus on with people. And it doesn't have to be a huge multifamily, like a house might give you, when we went through Robert Kiyosaki's program, he said $50 a door. If you're cash flowing $50 a door, buy the house. And, that's kind of where we started. So our cash flow in our area was better than that. We liked it. But our very first multifamily, it was about like 300 or 400 a door. And we bought it at a 24 unit, our very first building. Well, when we seen the scale of that, it was like, holy Hannah, that's way sweeter. And you know what? Once we knew the process, it was no harder to buy a multifamily than it was to buy a single family.
Yeah.
There's a few more things you need to know. There's a longer due diligence period, different stuff like that. But once you know and understand that, I tell my students it's actually easier to buy a multifamily than it is to buy a single family. First of all, even just to be able to qualify for financing, because they look more at your net worth than they do your income. With houses, it's all about your personal income. And if you can, look after things, if the property goes vacant. So that was the biggest key for us.
Yeah. I tell you what, here, and I appreciate that too, by the way. You mentioned the scalability. So the first time I bought and again, went from duplexes, fourplexes, a 5-unit building, a 9-unit building. And then I thought there was a 78-unit apartment complex available. And I thought, I'm going to go for it. And it took a while. It did take longer. It took about a year.
Yeah.
But what I recognized right off the bat by looking at the old owners' rent rolls and profit and loss and all that stuff was, my gosh, if I own a single family home and I raise the rent $20 a month, that's $240 a year additional cash flow. And if there's a 10% cap rate in the area, that means I added $24,000 to my net worth. Okay. Now, if I had a 100-unit building and I raised the rents $20 on each unit, that's $2,000 a month or $24,000 a year cash flow at a 10% cap rate. I just added nearly $250,000 to my net worth, right? In one move,
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that was what we liked about it too, because, and what does it take? You give a rent increase and you just mail that many out or email or, whatever. It's not much more work involved, right?
Yep. Plus you got one parking lot, one
one roof, one boiler, or maybe two, but yeah, absolutely.
Yep. And guess what else we found out later on? As you did those rent increases, and we ended up raising rents in a couple of moves about $200 over the years we owned it. We owned it over 8 years and raised the rents an average of $200. But what I didn't realize was the larger properties are appraised based on something called income approach to valuation. And it's based on the net income, right? Yeah. So if you think about it, most of our expenses are relatively fixed. So as we add increased rents, we add more to the bottom line we increase the bottom line without taking on a lot more expense. So what that means is the values are greater. So when it came to leveraging, we had much more leveraging power with a bigger building, and to the tune of several $100,000, doing like an equity line or a commercial line of credit or something like that. That was an amazingly powerful asset to have, not because of income production, but because it allowed us to leverage it down the road. So everybody listening, I hope you're grasping what Edna is talking about here, because it's not just you have more net worth and more cash flow. There's other doors that are open to you as a result, of doing the bigger properties. Yeah,
absolutely. And the lenders like that. You get $250,000 on this building, 100 or million on that building, and then the other thing we really liked is the ability to refinance our capital out after we built in that forced appreciation. And refinancing that capital out is tax-free dollars. So we love that as well.
Exactly. Yeah. Hey, by the way, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I do want to go. I apologize. I'm kind of jumping backwards here a little bit, but I wanted to talk about the single families versus the multis. But back on a prior subject, when it came to financing and using other people's money, would you mind sharing like a case study? I mean, change the names to protect the innocent, of course, but maybe a time where you did a wraparound mortgage or a blanket mortgage, or you bought subject to, or you bought on terms, or any type of owner financing, so people to understand in practical terms, what is it? Because a lot of people ask me, what does that really mean, owner financing? And they, in their mind, are thinking they're like a bank and the owner gives you the money, the loan. And I'm like, well, yeah, technically, but there's more to it. So would you mind if you have a case study of your own or one of your clients that...
Actually, a really nice case study for one of my students that just did. So she started with me probably about 2 years ago. And in December of not last year, but of 2019, she took possession of a 9-unit apartment building. That 9-unit apartment building, 7 of the 9 units were vacant because the owners owned it too long and they ended up in a nursing home and they just couldn't manage it. And the son had one son that was in Toronto area. The son lived in Vancouver, didn't want anything to do with it. And the couple had lived on this building for so long, they didn't want to let the income go, right? But when they ended up in a nursing home, they couldn't look after everything. Nobody else was looking after it either, which was kind of sad. So 7 of the 9 units ended up vacant. So when she got the property under contract, she still paid a pretty penny for it, but she also realized through my guidance that she could actually end up with a really, really good deal here. So she got it under contract for $1.1 million. And she just, because there's certain things you need to do in an order when you're talking vendor financing, and it's not always the first thing you talk about. Realized very quickly she couldn't get traditional financing with that. And she didn't have the 1.1. She had the money for the down payment. She had the money for the renovations, but she didn't have the, what you'd get from a traditional lender. And because it was so vacant, she couldn't get it. So that's at that point, she went back to the vendor and said, okay, I really want this property. I can't get traditional financing because of the vacancy. Would you vendor finance? So she got $900,000 vendor financing on a $1.1 million building, put $200,000 into it, increased the rents. They had the rents around $850 a month. She increased rents to $1,800. She really fixed it up nicely. And just about a month ago, she refinanced it at a $1.85 million.
Wow.
9-unit building. So it doesn't even make really good on even like the smaller units, which is, when people are first starting out, lots of times they're intimidated on 78, 90 units, stuff like that. And that's so doable, doable to manage even after as a long-term hold. She's going to make $5,500 a month in cash flow. Wow.
That's an amazing story. And the thing is that's just one example. I mean, that happens every day.
All the time. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. So if you don't mind me asking, obviously you're from Saskatchewan. have you, Justin, invested both in Canada and the U.S., or just in Canada, or just the U.S., or because I know Canadians? I've told you before, I'm a part-time Canadian, and I know a lot of Canadians would invest in the States, um, you know, because some of the rules, like in Toronto and Quebec or Montreal, were kind of tough on the landlords, more so than the States. But there's some amazing opportunities up there, So,
Yeah. When we started, I think, Gary, like a lot of people, we started close to home. I mean, our initial interest was just because of what was happening in our market. It was doing so well. So our initial purchases were mostly in our province, and we branched over to Manitoba and Alberta. But and we actually spent quite a bit of time down in States early on, 2008, 2009, when your market correction was really going on. But our struggle then is we couldn't get financing. The only thing you could buy cash, and we didn't have a lot of cash. So we focused on our area for a long time. But, recently we moved into the U.S. And we deal just with accredited investors now. And we bought 80 units in the spring at around $21,000 a door. Wow. And put in about another between 12 and 15,000. We're still not all the way through. And again, it was experiencing higher vacancy. But we renovated. We were able to get higher rents than we even projected. I think we projected we'd get about 600. Now we're getting about 699 on average so built in huge value in the time frame. And now we're just going to be refinancing here soon. And now just put another 178 under contract in Memphis as well. So that's where we're focusing right now. And the new ones, 21.6 a door, probably put in about 16,000 each, and the after repair value should be about $55,000.
Wow! And what state is that? Which state?
Memphis, Tennessee.
Tennessee, yeah. Volunteer state, amazing. Okay, all right. Well, let's do this. I think we got some people probably pretty interested here. So what you're doing, but what would you say to someone who's approached you? Maybe they're a dentist, or they're an engineer, or a teacher, or and they want to start investing. How would you create, say, like a 5-year plan, and why, how and why is it so much different? Like, because right now they're probably on what we used to call the 40-year plan.
Exactly.
Start when you're 22, retire when you're 62, and this is so much better. But if you could expand on that a little bit, that'd be awesome.
Sure. And one thing I want to point out too, Gary, is the lady I just spoke to you about in Ontario. She was a realtor. So cool. She had already owned a couple houses, but could see the value of getting in multifamily, but was scared to do it on her own. So that was her first deal. So I expect great things to come from her going forward. But, she's on the 5-year plan because, she got to the point where she just did not want to be working for anybody else anymore. She wanted her time to be her own. And that was her primary reason for looking at this. She's got big goals. She's not going to stop at the one building. She wants to, be a real estate entrepreneur, earning lots of money, both net worth wise, wealth building, but also cash flow. And, when people look at a 5-year plan, one of the things that I work with people on is, let's start by what it would take to take care of your day-to-day income now. And, if you've ever played that game, Cash Flow 101 with Robert Kiyosaki's game, have you ever played that, Gary? Love that game. You know what? You're in the rat race. You know what? Doctors, dentists, engineers. When I first started playing that game, that's who I wanted to be. Doctor, dentist, because they had the highest income. But you know what I learned? It was the janitors and the secretaries that could get out of the rat race earlier because they didn't have such high expenses. So we always start with, what does it take to cover off your day-to-day expenses? And the sad part is, people, they're so wired to get in debt and get in debt and get in debt. And then pretty soon, it's really hard to get out of that rat race. So I'm trying to teach my kids, don't get into that debt. Start out where, whatever your basic living expenses are, and then, build your wealth from there. So that's why the 5-year plan can work. A little harder sometimes for dentists and lawyers and engineers with the higher income. But, one of my students, engineer, and he loved my program, he said, because it's very systematized, and he loved systems. He told me he went 10 years to school to be an engineer. And in 8 months of my program, he had moved his portfolio from 7 doors to 40 doors. And now he's working on another, I think, 25 or 30 as we speak, which is going to take care. So within 2 years of starting, it's going to take care of his day-to-day income. And from there, it's about building wealth and stuff like that. But yeah, that's to get started on the 5-year plan. It's get your bases covered, because once your bases are covered and you don't have to go to a job every single day of the week, then you can start looking at the other wealth building strategies and using other people's capital and expanding on what you've already been able to do. And in 5 years, you can be totally financially free. I've had people do it sooner, but they had smaller incomes to start with, where they did, or they lived a lifestyle where they didn't have to worry about spending 10, 20, 30,000 a month to cover up those day-to-day expenses.
Yeah. And what's funny is there's so many ironies here and similarities, because when I first started investing in earnest, I bought my first property when I was 23, right out of college, but then got married, had children. 10 years goes by, and I'm 35 thinking, I wish I'd have done what my roommate's dad, he's the one who helped us get the first house. Wish I'd have followed his instructions, which was start investing now, and I won't have to work when I'm 35 years old. But I didn't.
Yeah.
But I did start when I was 35, and I did retire when I was 40. So it was a 5-year plan, Yeah. And I needed at the time, my net income was just right around, $4,500, $5,000 a month after my taxes and all the stuff that comes out. And I thought I needed to meet that. So can you kind of wrap things up here? Talk about, creating that $5,000 a month passive income stream and doing it in 3 to 5 years, because I knew people that have done it even in 18 months.
We did our first 5,000 in 18 months. And what I find is people can focus. That first 5,000 can be hit in 18 months very easily. I've had people do it in I think the shortest is 8 months, because of course there is that window where you get it under contract, take possession. It's still going to take you 4 months. So people can do that, but they have to first of all decide it's even possible. And remember how we talked earlier about mindset? It's a mindset shift to start thinking at those larger numbers. But once you can shift your mind to the possibilities out there, you definitely can bypass single family and get straight into multifamily and have that 5-year plan. And once the bases are covered, like I said, you can go on and do whatever. One of my students, a teacher, started with me 4 years ago. He started with me in June, and he said, Edna, I have to finish your course by August because I got to go back to school. And he says, but I don't know how to raise capital, and I've got a couple deals under contract, ran out of my own money. How can you help? So within that 8-week period, he bought both those houses, investor capital, $1,100 a month cash flow, and then just went on to do all kinds of great things. Bought more houses, bought some multifamily. Last year, and I hadn't talked to him for probably 6 months, but he reached out to me. He told me he made $600,000 last year just in wholesaling deals, because he got so good at attracting deals that he couldn't handle them all himself, and he hadn't got his team in place to be able to handle it. So he wholesaled instead, made $600,000, and that was from a 4-year dead start. Before that, he owned just a couple rental houses. He knew the value, but didn't know how to scale. Yeah.
Wow. Well, I tell you what, this has been, an amazing podcast interview, and we have such similar backgrounds. I mean, with Robert Kiyosaki, the Canadian Connection, and we, it's a very simplistic and I'll even call it conservative approach, but it works. Creates a solid foundation. A lot of the other methods that have been taught out there in the past, unfortunately, they were so flimsy and there was so little left at the end of the day. When so few people succeed, but stuff like this. Guys, this is the kind of thing that you can do. Everybody can do it, even if you have a full-time job.
Yeah. Just have to set their mind to it.
Exactly. It is. It's all it's all in your faith and your belief in taking action. Getting
and guidance. They do need some guidance, especially. Yep. I find that with my students, the first building. That's where they learn everything. Then the second one, they fine tune it. By the time they do the third one, they need very little help from me, because they understand the system. It's rinse and repeat.
Yeah. Well, the folks that are listening to this, how can they get a hold of you? What, website, chapter in the book, free consultation? Because I've got a feeling you're going to get a lot of takers here because of the crowd we have are generally the kind of folks that will want to do this. This is what we do. This is who we are. So,
Perfect. Yeah. My website's ednakeep.com. My email address is edna@ednakeep.com. And I'll send you a link, Gary. I've got a free masterclass that I offer. It's about 45 minutes long. It kind of trains on the way that we do things. And I can give that as a free option. And at the end of watching that, it gives them an opportunity to book a strategy call with me to see if it's a fit for them. But the best way is by starting at edna@ednakeep.com or my website, ednakeep.com.
Awesome. Okay. ednakeep.com and email edna@ednakeep.com.
Yep.
So, yeah. Well, everybody listening, I just want to tell you, you've got the goods today from a real pro, and I fully endorse her because I know some of her connections actually. So this is kind of a unique opportunity here for you. So take Edna up on that, and also remember to go to realestatewithgarywilson.com and locate yourself an investor agent to help you get these properties that Edna is going to show you how to purchase. Okay. So it's a great combination here. It doesn't cost anything. Go in there. The community site's free. You can get all kinds of free books and stuff like that, even before you become a member. So do that. And also, and I think I speak for a lot of folks when I say thank you very much for sharing.
My pleasure. My absolute pleasure, Gary.
Yeah. Yep. So everybody, we will see you on the next podcast. In the meantime, take care and God bless.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Massive Passive Cash Flow. Be sure to go to realestatewithgarywilson.com to join our community and start building wealth today.